Howdy, how y'all doing today? This video is going to be a little bit different than what I normally talk about, but first off, if you're down in Vegas, do not stay here. This is called the Luxor Hotel and Casino. Trust me, it's not worth it. Secondly, a lot of people are talking about this. I'm going to talk college football in this video. I shouldn't say some people, a lot of people are talking about the college realignment, especially with the Big Ten lately. They poached off USC and UCLA, and as you can see, I'm an Oregon fan, and basically what I'm about ready to say is the Oregon Ducks and Washington Huskies are headed to the Big Ten. Basically, Oregon and Washington, they abandoned the Titanic and swam to the refuge of the Big Ten. The Big Ten gave them a lifeline, and they took it. I don't have a problem with that. I have a lot of people, a buddy of mine who's an Oregon State fan. I think Oregon State and Washington State, but let me first say, I think Stanford and Cal, if they don't get invited to the Big Ten, I think Cal might go to the Big 12 or to the Mountain. I'm hearing Stanford, if I was them, I don't get an invite to the Big Ten, I would probably become an independent like Notre Dame. Especially with their academics and everything. I think them being an independent makes more sense than anything. I would hope that it makes more sense, especially the Big Ten is now the Big 18. You'd be better off just doing like a Big 20, because then you have 10 teams in the West, 10 teams in the East. I would think that's what you'd probably want to do. It makes more sense. And then, especially with the college realignment, with the playoff, eventually it's going to be, I think, up to 12 teams. So I think potentially, and it's not like the Big Ten is poaching off some bottom feeders from the Pac-12. They're getting top schools from the Pac-12. USC, UCLA, you're getting Oregon and Washington. You got top 25 schools right there. I mean, those schools are no slouch. Now, the last time any of them won a national championship was USC, but Oregon's been there twice. It's been a long time since UCLA's been there, if they've been there. But Washington, I think they've been there since 94 or 91, whenever they won it. I think that was the year they won it with, I think it was 91 where they finished in a tie with Miami. I'm not sure about that. I don't follow Miami or Washington much, so let me start by saying that. But let's get back to the topic. I have a good buddy of mine who's an Oregon State fan, and I feel bad for Oregon State and Washington State because they're now the scraps of what now is going to be called the defunct Pac-12. My guess for them is they're going to the Mountain West, I think is what it is. Yeah. So instead of getting $20 million, I guess, a season for your football rights and stuff like that, they're going to end up with $4 million. And I don't know how do you maintain those facilities and everything when when schools like Oregon State and Washington State don't have the money, and I don't know how they're going to figure that out, because right now their TV deals are going to be nil. Don't know how they're going to survive, but we'll see in the upcoming. It won't be this year, but it'll be the following year. It'll be interesting to see how that works. But, and as much as I hate it, the college football now is about TV deals. It's about money. It's not about the fans anymore. It's basically not about the fans, the fan base. And if I'm correctly, the Pac-12 has been, what was the Pac-10 and then the Pac-8 before that. It's been around since 1915. It's not about that anymore. There's no loyalty. I hate to see this for the Pac-12, because I told someone about 13 years ago, after we lost to Auburn in the national championship, which I still think Scam Newton was ineligible, but that's in the past. I won't bring that up. I believe when we went from the Pac-10 to the Pac-12 just so we could have a conference championship game, to me, that was the death of the conference. I never believed we should have added Utah or Colorado, Oh, and another thing I forgot to mention, Utah, Colorado already went. That was done given, but Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah are going to the Big 12. To me, when Arizona announced they were going, I knew Oregon and Washington were on their way out. I think if the two Arizona schools would have stayed, I believe Oregon and Washington, because they were going to be a package deal, the two, I believe they would have stayed as well. But I knew once Arizona was gone that it was a foregone conclusion. So with with that being said, I mean, it's not, the Pac-12's been together since 1915, 108 years. I mean, and like I was saying, they were the Pac-10 before that. I wish they would have stayed the Pac-10. As a fan, I didn't care about a conference championship game, especially the year Oregon went to the Natty against Auburn. We didn't have a conference championship game that year. Or after Oregon beat Oregon State in the Civil War, they were number 2 team in that they played number 1 Auburn. I mean, it was just that simple. I think things were a little bit simpler back then. I think once they had the conference championship game, I think that really started to cloud the judgment. And I never ever thought Utah and Colorado were really part of, the Pac-10 or Pac-12, which is the Pacific Conference. Pacific American Conference, I believe is what they call it. So, it's just one of them things. I mean, it's unfortunate, I hate for the fan bases because, like I said, Oregon State and Washington State, those fan bases, they're going to be scraps. My prayer is that Cal and Stanford get Big Ten invites. You've heard rumors they might. There's been rumors that Florida State and Clemson might. There's even been rumors that, maybe they'll give Notre Dame an invite. Stanford will go independent, and then maybe by any chance they can get Florida State or Clemson. I think if the Big Ten can get Florida State or Clemson, I think that would fill the 2 spots. I think if they could bring Notre Dame in, they would. But if they can't, why not go for Stanford and Cal? I mean, you got 2 really good academic schools. And we're not just talking football here. I mean, think about how good Stanford is in some of the other ones, like basketball. Girls volleyball. To me, they're one of the premier volleyball teams in the country. They're women's basketball team, to name a few. Cal's pretty good as well. And think about some of the players that Cal has had over the years. Think about guys like Aaron Rodgers. Think about Deshaun Jackson, Marshawn Lynch, Jared Goff. Right now, Justin Wilcox is their coach. Former Oregon Duck back in the day, before he was a turncoat at Boise State and Tennessee. But we'll leave that for another day. Oh, and Washington, I think, as well. Yeah. But that's my hope is that Stanford and Cal get invites. Because 18 in the Big Ten doesn't make a lot of sense. 9-9 in 2 conferences. I think if you added those 2, you'd have 10 in the West, 10 in the East. Okay? So I think that would be better because, especially Oregon and Washington, now you can have West Coast games at night. The Big Ten can have West Coast games at night, and they can cover the eastern part, they can cover the central, and then they can cover the west. And basically, there'd be the one conference. If they did have 20 teams, they'd be the biggest mega conference out there, but they'd be the one conference that could go from the East Coast to the West Coast. So they would clear the whole United States. They wouldn't be like the SEC in one little small area, or the ACC in their little tiny group, or the Big 12 who's starting to branch out, I guess. And the Mountain West, I don't even know what the hell they are. Sometimes I forget they're even, and some of the other little conferences, like Conference USA, the Sun Belt. I know there's others I can't even think of. But, that would, for me, that personally, that would be the best. But people right now are jumping all on Oregon and Washington, calling them traitors. They're not traitors. I mean, listen, the conference, they had opportunities. Several years ago, they had an opportunity to bring Texas and Oklahoma to the Pac-12. They didn't. They had opportunities to get TV deals done. They didn't. And they just kept, kicking the ball kicking the can down the road. And, when they didn't, when they kept doing that, it pretty much, it told me everything I needed to know. And I knew eventually this was probably going to happen. Now, some people said, well, they could have signed this deal with Apple TV for the streaming service. Yeah, they could have signed. I mean, I guess the offer I heard was 20 million. So it's supposedly, from what I've heard, and I don't have the specific numbers, but from what I've heard, they're getting 30 million from the Big Ten, which is not nearly what USC and UCLA are getting, but it's still more than the Pac-12 is going to give them. Larry Scott, to me, he killed the conference. He had opportunities to get stuff done and he didn't. And that's sad. I mean, you had a chance to better your conference, and then you had a chance not too long ago to get TV deals and bring some Big 12 schools out here to the Pac-12. Now, Big 12 obviously beat them to the punch. So I can see the Big 12 fans going, ha 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 ha. They're not losing any sleep that the Pac-12 is basically is sinking like the Titanic. Now they hit the iceberg and they're now going down. The ship's about sunk. You know, it's a shame that, and I was asking earlier a really good friend of mine who is the Oregon State fan. I'm like, how did we get to this point? I mean, why didn't they do something about this? You know, this has been a conference for 108 years, I believe. What happened? So, I mean, come on. You now all of a sudden and he, you know, he made his money. I think he made like $50 million as a commissioner, so he doesn't care. I mean, he screwed the conference, and he doesn't give a damn. The fans are going to get screwed. The other smaller schools are going to get screwed. Well, really, there's only two other schools that are going. Let's put it this way: there's two schools that are getting screwed out of this: Oregon State and Washington State. They're the only ones. Everyone else should do okay. I'm still concerned with Cal. Like I said, I don't want to beat a dead horse or anything, but I really hope Cal and Stanford do get possibly into the Big Ten, because they got so much lineage, so much history there. When you really speak to the bottom feeders, I mean, well, before Colorado left, they were the bottom feeder. I think they were 1-11 last season, but when you speak to the bottom feeders of the conference, Colorado comes to mind, and then, I'm sorry to say this, I know Cougar and Beaver fans are going to be mad at me, but Washington State and Oregon State, that's why no one's went out and grabbed them. My guess, they go to the Mountain West. They get to play in Vegas. So, yeah, I do love going to Vegas. I'll probably be going there in a couple of weeks and doing some more hotel reviews. So, but, you know, I'm hearing they'll play, you know, they got UNLV, San Jose State, Colorado State, Air Force, Boise State, Wyoming. Who else do they got? Oh, San Diego State's in that conference. They got some others I can't think of right off the top of my head, but none of those, I think, get you into the playoff. None of those really get you talked about. And if you do somehow qualify for one of the bids in the playoffs when they move to 12 teams, you're going to get pulverized in that first game. So no more notoriety. I can see Oregon State probably winning that in a couple of years. I can see them winning that conference, but they're just because of the conference, they're not going to get that notoriety that they would have probably gotten in the Pac-12. As bad as the viewership and everything was in the Pac-12 and the TV deals that they had at the time, at least you played some marquee teams. So, you know, with that being said, I just, you know, I'm going to come on here, and as many people as they want to trash Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA, I think they did what they had to do to survive, because if the Pac-12 would have had just a TV deal in place, they would have made more of a effort to gotten that TV deal in place. I think there's no doubt that the Pac-12 would still be together. This is a classic example of where money, TV deals, that nil money also comes into play. But now that plays a big part on these schools, and now that's the death of the Pac-12. And another thing for Oregon State and Washington State, how's their recruiting going to be? If you're a recruit coming in, okay, say you're a recruit coming in this year, and you're a recruit and you want to go play at Oregon State, and you're finding out that not only is this your last year in the Pac-12, but your future's uncertain, you're more likely going to the Mountain West. Do you really want to play in the Mountain West? I mean, I guess that's, I don't know that you want to play there. So now you look, if you're considering schools like Oregon or Oregon State, and now you see Oregon going to be playing in the Big Ten, you know what? You might flip and go to Oregon. I just think recruiting-wise, those two schools are going to take a hard hit. To me, and I think that's going to be the worst of it. They're going to take a hard hit recruiting-wise. And I don't think a lot of Oregon State and Washington State fans are prepared for this. But they're going to lose recruits, and I think it's going to change the whole landscape of football. Not like it already hasn't, especially with the mill. The mill money has just pretty much killed college football. I mean, you talk about paying, giving players the ability to, make money for signing their autographs and stuff like that, I mean, look what they did to SMU back in the 80s, What do they call it? The Pony Excess? I mean, ESPN did a documentary on it, but they gave them the death penalty and pretty much ended their football program for almost a couple decades. So, yeah, it's just the way the landscape is set up. It sucks, but like I was saying, Oregon and Washington, basically they abandoned the Titanic and swam to the refuge of the Big Ten. The Big Ten said, "Okay, we'll make you an offer. We're going to send you a life raft or a lifeline," and they did. And I think if I was Oregon and Washington, I would have done the same thing. I just think it's going to be really funny Big Ten football. Not that I don't enjoy Big Ten football, because I've always, kind of been partial to Michigan. I've always liked the way they do things in Ann Arbor, the Big House. I was here in, I think it was 2003 when they came and played at Autzen, and that was a hell of a good game. Michigan had some great players on that team. And then I went back the year we had Dennis Dixon. We went there to Ann Arbor, and I think we won 39-7 with his little, fake Statue of Liberty play that he stole from Boise State when they did it in the Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma. But yeah, it's just, it's a shame. It's a shame that it's all come down to this. But in essence, this is basically, it's basically the way the college football landscape is. I personally, I don't care how much money you have for school or anything. I like watching college football. Come Saturdays, I like watching college football. I'll watch games from the SEC, ACC. I've been known to catch a Mountain Conference game every once in a while. And of course, the Pac-12, I'm partial to them. Or I was. I guess this year will be the last year I get to be partial to them. But yeah, it's unfortunate that this all happened. So I know I've been rambling on here, but that's just my take. I wanted to come out here and put my take on here. So, all right. So you all have a great night. Okay.